then you'll help each other to continue to draw close to Jehovah. But more importantly, as both of you continue to build on your relationship with Jehovah, drawing closer to him will naturally draw you guys closer together into an unbreakable bond, a bond of one flesh, like was originally intended. Because he loves us, Jehovah wants us to succeed. He wants us to be happy. But he knows we've inherited sinfulness and selfishness from our first human parents. He knows that they made the choice to focus on their relationship with each other to the exclusion of their relationship with their Creator. So in his word, the Bible, he's given us loving direction that we can listen to and apply. And when we do, we can continue to build a loving and happy relationship that will last. And I know that's what both of you want. I asked you. Tiana, you told me that you love Jehovah's arrangement of marriage because it's a bond that should be unshakable, right? When you both make vows to each other today, you said that that's because you both love Jehovah, and you've made him available to guide you through any trying times ahead. And you commented on how your parents have helped you to appreciate how serving Jehovah together in your marriage can make it happy and successful. And Sage, you said you appreciated how Jehovah clearly outlines how precious a marriage is and how important it is to follow what the marriage consists of. You talked about how Jehovah has clearly outlined the roles that each of you play to make this marriage a success. So let's take a few minutes. Let's remind ourselves of what the standards that Jehovah gave and how Jehovah has encouraged you to make this marriage a success. First of all, for you, Sage, in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 3, we read that Jehovah's assigned you as a husband to be the head of your family. To be successful with that, you have to have the right sense of it, and you have to keep that right sense. Don't focus on it as a position, but as a role, as an assignment. See, when some men get confused and they start looking at it as a position, and the authority that seems to go along with it, then they tend to abuse that authority. Some even become tyrants in their own household and demand respect. But when you focus on the role, the responsibility that the headship brings with it, you realize there's a lot of work and thought involved. In fact, we husbands come to realize very quickly that we not only need Jehovah's help, we need the help of our wives if we're going to succeed in fulfilling the role as a family head. In making decisions, you have to take a lot of factors into consideration. Of course, the most important one is how Jehovah feels about any decisions that we make. And we have to feel the ultimate responsibility to care for the material needs of our family, but also the emotional and the recreational needs. Now, when you think about the material needs of the two of you, they may be similar. It may be easy for you to judge. You both need a place to live. You both need food on the table. But you can't simply supply the emotional and recreational needs that you feel. Tiana's needs will be different than yours. So you must communicate and you must listen carefully. That doesn't mean that you make all of your family decisions based off of her wants and desires. Sorry, Tiana. That's not healthy in the relationship, and it's not according to Jehovah's example. You have to take in all factors, Sage, and make the best decisions for both of you. And the most important need that both of you have is spiritual. So as the family head, Jehovah expects you to take the lead and make decisions that will draw both of you closer to him. And that has to be evident not only in just setting a good spiritual routine, but you need to create an environment in your family that allow both of you to grow as spiritual people. Now, remember, Sage, Tiana is not a child, and she's certainly not a spiritual babe. So you can't just rely on the meetings and a surface family worship. You have to have spiritual conversations with her. Listen to her needs, just like you listen for her emotional and her physical needs. And then you need to help her to fulfill those needs while you also fill your own spiritual needs, which you've been in the habit of doing. It's a tall task, isn't it? But thankfully, we have a perfect example to follow. Turn to Ephesians chapter 5. Back in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, when husbands were assigned to be the head of the family, that verse says that husbands have Christ as their head, and he learned from his head, Jehovah. So let's look at the inspired counsel that we see in our head, Jesus, if we look at verse 25 of Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25. We read there, husbands, continue loving your wives, just as the Christ also loved the congregation and gave himself up for it. Now, Sage, I know at this moment you can't imagine not continuing to love Tiana the way that you feel about her right now. But this verse reminds us that it's not a selfish love. We're not being commanded to love our wives as long as it makes us feel happy. You see, Jesus showed his love by delivering himself up for the congregation. He showed it through unselfish acts. And so if you look in verses 28 and 29, it builds on that idea. It says, in the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. A man who loves his wife loves himself. For no man ever hated his own body, but he feeds and cherishes it, just as the Christ does the congregation. So you see, our head, Jesus, he set the example. He unselfishly put the interest of others ahead of his own. And as a result, he was refreshing to be around. He made others better people when they were around him. It's true, he cared for physical needs. He fed people. He showed other ways of caring for them. And we know that he's going to do that into a greater degree where no human in the future will ever have any needs. But always his focus was on people's spiritual needs, their need to draw closer to Jehovah. By following that example, you can be successful in this role as the head of your family. I asked Tiana, Sage, one of the reasons that she's marrying you is that she believes you can fulfill this role. She said that you have already shown her that you value how she feels and that you are considerate of her. She says that when you talk about things, even when you have differing opinions initially, you listen to her and you're even willing to change your decision when it's reasonable. She's watched the respectful way that you treat your mom and your sister, and she's confident that you will respect her thoughts and opinions as well. It's true, she doesn't expect you to be perfect, but she admires your good qualities and your desire to make this family work. And she appreciates that you're calm and patient. It's clear to me that she views you as a special person, and she looks forward to making this marriage a success with you. And Tiana, I asked Sage why he believes that you will be able to help him fulfill his role as a head. He pointed out how respectful and supportive you are as he tries to make decisions. He appreciates how you really listen and to what he has to say, and that you show him compassion and patience. He says that he's noted that when you talk about spiritual decisions, you don't just tell him what you think he wants to hear. You respectfully discuss your viewpoints, and then you support the decisions that are made. He summed it up that the way you support him gives him confidence that he can handle his responsibility for the spiritual benefit of your new family. So let's, Tiana, focus for a few minutes on your role in this marriage. Just like Sage has been given a role, we read that Jehovah gave you a role as a complement or a helper. Again, I encourage you, never focus on this as a position, but it's a role, it's an assignment. Women who focus on this as a position, they misinterpret it as if it's inferior or it's being a slave. But if you focus on the role, then you'll see that it's an honorable and a dignified assignment. In 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 7, Jehovah says that one of the best ways that you can support Sage is to honor him. Now, while it's true that showing respect for the arrangement and the role that Jehovah has assigned to him, that might be showing his honor, but the most valuable benefit of demonstrating honor to him is to show your love and your desire for him to be successful in his role in the family. When he feels supported and encouraged to be a good family head, you're going to benefit because your spiritual, emotional, and physical needs are going to be cared for. And it's in that context that you can see the value of what, if we go back to Ephesians chapter 5, it says about your role. Notice what you can do to promote happiness in your marriage and to make it a success. If we look at verses 22 through 24. It says, let wives be in subjection to their husbands as the Lord, because a husband is head of his wife, just as the Christ is head of the congregation, he being a savior of this body. In fact, as the congregation is in subjection to the Christ, wives should also be to their husbands in everything. Now, this is clearly from the description of divine arrangement. It's part of the instructions that husbands and wives are given in order to make this divine arrangement a success. But what it's not is it's not an indication of your intelligence or your spirituality. It's not saying that you need a man in order to draw close to Jehovah or a man to make decisions for you. No, what this is it's focused on helping this union of two intelligent, spiritual people with their own thoughts and opinions to pull together in the same direction. See, if a wife were to focus selfishly on a misinterpretation of the position in the family and try to wrestle the headship for herself, it would simply cause discord and confusion and ultimately unhappiness in the marriage. But it doesn't help Sage if you simply follow his headship because that's his role. To be happy and successful and to help him in the role, notice the spirit that you should approach it if you look at verse 33. It says, nevertheless, each one of you must love his wife as he does himself. On the other hand, the wife should have deep respect for her husband. Why is having deep respect important? What happens when we as humans follow a person who has authority, but we don't respect them? Think of how a lot of people treat their boss. If they don't respect their boss, they'll look for ways to pick him apart or to show the boss how they could do a better job or than the boss can. Or when the boss makes a mistake, people like to make a big deal out of the error of judgment. They like to pick fun at the mistake and never let the boss forget about it. But a Christian wife would never think of doing something like that. Yes, it's true, your imperfect head is going to make mistakes. But remember, you are a helper to him. So you need to show him deep respect and continue to encourage him. Find ways to support his decisions, even if you don't always agree with them, or maybe you would have done it a different way. You trust that he's going to try his best because he loves you, and he wants to make you happy just as he says he does. Proverbs chapter 31 gives a beautiful description of other practical ways that you can support the family. You can contribute by making your home a place of peace and an environment that both of you can enjoy. When you're industrious and working together,